Hey guys, it's Emily. Welcome to Posie Lane. So today we're going to be making our own DIY textured paint. And to do that, we're going to be using acrylic paint and baking soda and mixing them together. And what I love with that is that you can make almost any color that you can find acrylic paint in, and it comes in so many colors. And the way this works, it's so versatile. This finish will work if you're wanting to use like glass or ceramic or kind of almost anything that you can find, this paint will stick to. And so today I found these really cute little woodland figurines, and we're gonna be using the technique on these two cute little guys. So I'm doing some woodland creatures because when I think about woodland creatures, I think about winter. And after Christmas is over, I kind of like to do something that I call winterizing my home. And it's not getting the pipes ready. Like most people, when they talk about winterizing, they think that you're talking about, you know, getting your pipes ready for winter, or if you have a pool. I know as a kid we had a pool, we had to put different chemicals in it and get it ready to not, you know, have anything burst when it got really cold. So that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is after all the Christmas decorations are kind of down, how can I make my home still feel wintry and cozy, but not have all like the sparkle and red and green of Christmas? And so when I thought about woodland creatures, one, I'm a sucker for anything like cute and woodland. I just love it. But two, they just speak to me about like being cozy and cute and cuddly. And that's one of the things that I want to kind of give off in my decorations. And the other thing that I do when I'm getting things winterized is I'll just take some things and just edit them. So like this is an example of an arrangement I had near my TV. And I would just take out like the red and sparkly and all of that and just leave the green because it still feels wintry to me and it doesn't feel Christmassy once all of the sparkle and all of this is off. I also do that with like my coffee bar area. I usually have different things in it and I'll kind of just leave some of the evergreens in it. And I also do that with my wreath. And the funny story with my wreath is that I have a bow on it, a big red bow that I made this year. And normally what I'll do is I'll take the bow off and I'll leave it because it's just different evergreens and it has some little blueberries. So it still looks like winter. And I know when I need to take it down because the birds will start trying to eat the berries thinking that they're real. So once it starts to be getting warmer and the birds are out, I just take the wreath down because I don't want the birds to think that they're gonna find berries on my wreath. But that's what I do when I winterize. For the supplies, you're gonna need something to put the paint onto that you're doing the finish on. And I found these at the Target dollar spot, which is harder to say than you think it is. But I know that is always changing. Like I'll go one time and I'm like, that's so cute, but I might wait. And then the next time I go, it's not there. So this finish will work on pretty much any, I've tried plastic and I've tried glass, and now I'm doing this ceramic, but I think it would work on a lot of different surfaces. So you could just play around with that. And then the other thing to make the paint, you're gonna need baking soda and then acrylic paint. And I have different shades of gray because I'm doing a raccoon and I'm not exactly sure like what color it is that I'm wanting. And then I have like an ivory parchment color for the owl. And then I have something to mix all of the paint on. And for the paintbrush, you just need something that you're gonna be able to, you're not really painting like this, you're kind of like dabbing it. So anything that you have that you can kind of dab the paint and apply it onto will work. And that's all you need to get started. Let me show you guys what I do to put together the textured paint. Now, if you're familiar with like cooking and baking, this is more like cooking rather than baking. And what I mean is like with baking, you need the exact measurements or something may not come out right. Like your cake may not rise or something like that. But when you're cooking, you may add like a dash of basil, a little bit more garlic, and you do it to taste. And so that's what I mean when I say it's more like cooking. You're gonna be adding things kind of until it kind of looks the way you want it to look. So I'm gonna start with this lighter paint, this lighter gray, and I may add some of the darker as I go. And the thing about making this paint is you just wanna make sure you make enough that it will cover your whole surface, because since this is not an exact science, one time I make it, it may look totally different than another time. So you wanna make sure that however much you make is gonna cover whatever it is that you pick out to do. So first I'm gonna use this gray paint. Get it to come out. And I think I want it just a little bit darker, so I'm gonna add a little bit of this darker one. mix that together. Now that I kind of like the shade, I'm gonna start mixing in the baking soda, and I'm just gonna add a little bit at a time until I like the consistency. And so when I mix it, I'm just kind of looking for it to be kind of chalky. If you've ever used like chalk paint, I kind of like it, the consistency kind of like chalk paint. And when I say chalk paint, I mean the things that you paint like furniture with, not the chalk paint that's like to make a chalkboard with. So once you kind of like the consistency, you can kind of notice that it looks a little bit thicker. You probably are good to go because it dries a little bit more thick than it even looks here. I painted the raccoon first because I'd already mixed the paint for the raccoon and I didn't want that paint to dry out. And when I paint the raccoon, if you notice, I'm dabbing it onto the raccoon actually, and it's not really like a brush stroke action because for some reason it works better just dabbing it on. And I'm making sure when I'm dabbing the face to come at different angles because there's a lot of crevices and details on the face of this raccoon, and I wanted to make sure that I got all of it covered and didn't miss any of the different places on his face. I'm gonna paint the rest of the raccoon the same way I painted the face, where I'm dabbing it and coming at different angles, and I made sure to cover all of the body with the textured paint. One thing to note is if you see the paint when it's wet doesn't look as textured as it does once the paint is actually dry. So give it a little bit of time and let it dry, and it's gonna have more of that textured paint look that you're hoping to go for. So I just covered the rest of the body and rotated it around, dabbing as I went, making sure that I was covering all of it. My son, when he was a toddler, used to say raccoon the cutest little way. He would say raccoon instead of raccoon. And I didn't have the heart to correct him because I thought it was so cute how he'd say raccoon instead of raccoon. So I'm curious, is there anything cute that maybe your child or your grandchild or niece or nephew or maybe just a little kid that was in your life used to say and you hated having to correct them because it was just so cute how they said it wrong? Let me know in the comments. One crazy story I have about the raccoon is that we usually go camping almost every fall, and a lot of times we go to the same campsite. And this past year, when we went in the fall, the raccoons started to come after our food once we had all of our lights off. We heard a noise and it was really quiet and really dark, and my husband shined a light and it luckily scared them away, but it was too late for our hot dog buns. They had taken them off with them, and later on, like the next day, we found the whole entire package empty and they had stolen all of our hot dog buns. If you notice on this raccoon, I'm going back around and I'm getting all the details just to make sure that I've covered all of it and that he doesn't have any missing spots. And now he's ready to dry, and I can't wait to see all the results once he's dry. I now needed to mix the paint for the owl. And for the owl, I mentioned before that I'm using a Parchment White, and I liked the shade of white because it kind of has like a yellow tone to it, and I think it will look more warm once it comes out. And that's what I'm looking for with like a wintry owl. And if you noticed, I added baking soda to the paint, and I'm just going to mix it. And again, I'm eyeballing how much I want in there, and I'm kind of feeling how thick it is as I mixed it just to see if it was the consistency that I wanted it to be. And this time I decided it really wasn't as thick as I wanted it to be. So I ended up adding more baking soda to the paint. And so again, I just eyeballed it, adding a tap or two of baking soda, and I mixed it again. And this time I like the consistency more, and I think it's ready to use. One thing I want to note is I did almost run out of paint when I painted the raccoon. So this time I really made sure to make more paint so I had enough to cover the owl. And if you can see, this is kind of like a thick, muddy consistency, which is what we need for painting the textured and getting the right effect. I use the same technique on the owl that I did with a raccoon. And so I'm just doing like the dabbing technique where I'm dabbing all over the face, trying to get different angles. And I was making sure to get all the different crevices because there's a lot of detail on the owl's face and also on the owl's belly. And so I was just making sure that I really got all of the different angles and that it really was covering him really good. Once I was done doing that, I started working on the rest of the body and his feet, and I made sure that all of him was covered. One thing about white owls is I kind of have a soft spot for owls, and especially white owls. There was like a season for about 10 years that I didn't tell anyone this, but I really wanted a white owl figurine. And I don't even know why I had it in my head that I really wanted a white owl, but I just really, really wanted one. And then randomly one Christmas, my husband's cousin gave me a white owl, and she didn't know anything about it. And I've loved that owl figurine ever since. And so randomly at a restaurant, I was telling someone about how I loved white owls, and someone gave me a white owl figurine. And this was a few years later. And as I was talking about it, I looked up, and there was like chandeliers all over the restaurant that had white owls, like ceramic white owls. And right after that, I went to look at some apartments because my husband was being transferred. And when we went to go look at the apartments, one of the apartments I walked by had a white owl on one of the wreaths. I think it was a wreath on the door. So white owls have always had a really special place in my heart, and I will also just notice them sometimes. I'll see a bunch of white owls. So that's why I wanted to make another white owl for my house. So if you notice, I got everything covered, and I'm kind of just double checking everything to make sure that everything was covered really well. And I checked to make sure that I got all the different details and crevices and around his wings and around his face and his ears, because I don't want to accidentally miss something, because if I did miss something, then I'm not going to be able to make this paint the exact same consistency again, and I wouldn't be able to get all the details and fix it. So I did just want to make sure, doubly sure, that I had all the face and everything really covered and I didn't miss any spots. Once I did that, my owl is ready to dry, and if you look at him, he is so handsome. I can't wait to see what he looks like once it's all dry. I've let my two little figurines dry overnight. I didn't want to touch them or mess them up while they were drying, but they probably dried a little bit quicker than that, but I just left them alone for that amount of time. And I think they came out super cute. I'm really happy with how they look. And I think they'd be great to put, you know, anywhere on like a shelf or anything that you have, or maybe out on a table, to add a little bit of cuteness and warmth to your decorations when you're decorating for winter. One thing that I plan to do with mine, and I was going to show you, is just add some greens to it. And I'm using some stuff that I had left over from Christmas that is still green, but these are kind of things that you almost could find outside and just clip off of a tree or a bush even. So it's not like you're having to go look for this at a store. And what I would do is I would just take one of these and I'd clip, if it wants to clip, just a little bit off, and just add a little bit of green, oops, to it like that, just to add some like life and some color. And it would be fun just having it on a shelf or a little nook and just having a little bit of this green in the color. So that's what I plan to do with him. But I know you may not be able to find these two figurines. If you can't find these, I'm sure that there's something else really cute that you could find even at a thrift store that this finish would work on, because it seems like this sticks to a lot of different surfaces and it makes a really cool like concrete finish. So it, you know, even if it was like a bright yellow unicorn, and you don't, that just doesn't match your decor, you could do a muted color like this and it would totally transform whatever it is that you're painting on. That's it for today, and I had so much fun doing this craft. So thank you guys so much for following along with me, and I really can't wait for our next craft.